Aloha gang, Jason Jones coming to you from the Houston airport, and I wanted to write you a letter today. Today is the second anniversary of the collapse of Afghanistan, but I'm on my way to Lahaina to join Epic Ministries and our Vulnerable People Project team members who have been on the ground in Lahaina from the very first hours after the catastrophic fire. As you probably know, Hawaii is my home. We live in Texas now. It's the home of my children. It's where my in-laws, my mother-in-law lives, and so many members of my family. And so it's striking that at the Vulnerable People Project, the past week has been very similar to the weeks 2 years ago leading up to and following the initial collapse of Afghanistan. I wanted to send you this video to share with you our mission statement personally, so you know what it is we do and why we do what we do, and what we're doing now 2 years later after the fall of Afghanistan. Our mission, I founded the Vulnerable People Project in 2002, coming out of graduate school, and the idea was to harness the power and might of the conservative movement and the pro-life movement to serve the most vulnerable communities in the world when other organizations didn't have the will to show up. I knew that those two movements that I had been a part of since I was a 17-year-old young man had the will to stand up to the ideologies of the age and to stand with the vulnerable. And the idea was to take that and to push beyond, deeper into the culture of death, to stand with the most vulnerable people in the world when the world is left. There are other organizations that drill more wells. There are other organizations that care for more refugees. There are other organizations that deliver more food, the World Food Program, for example. But our mission is to go in those initial weeks after a catastrophe or the beginning of a war, or to stand with communities facing genocide when other organizations won't, and hence why we stand with the Uyghur and Chinese-occupied East Turkestan, why we have been committed to the Yazidi since really even in the Christians of Iraq, even leading up to the invasion of Iraq. And it's why I'm on my way to Lahaina, which is heartbreaking to think that the work that we do at the Vulnerable People Project is needed to care for my own family members and my own friends. But today, right now, we'll be giving you reports from Lahaina in the coming days. But right now, what I want to share with you is the people of Afghanistan. When we committed to rescuing what are called SIVs, those Afghans who earned their U.S. citizenship, a commitment and a promise from the U.S. government to be granted visas and U.S. citizenship eventually because of their daring and courageous service to this country. When the United States abandoned them, we were bombarded with requests from Army officers, veterans from all of the branches, and also from Christian pastors and others to evacuate their friends. We thought that would take a week or two, but the reality is now it's 2 years later. We have 170 SIVs left in safe houses. Our goal is to have everyone resettled by the end of this year. They're in safe houses in neighboring countries. Those safe houses now, they call them guest homes because there's English classes, vocational training. We put in water filtration systems. We put in good appliances. We're trying to make these, it's 2 years now, and we're trying to make their experience as livable as possible, even though they live in constant fear of being expelled from the countries they're in and sent back to Afghanistan, where they would face almost certain death. So I want to thank you. It has been 2 years. When I made this commitment 2 years ago, I thought it would be a couple of weeks. Actually, I thought it'd be a week, and then 2 weeks, and then 3 weeks. Each week, maybe it'll be 4 weeks. And I'm really grateful that I did not know what to say to the Afghan allies. I would be talking to them on the phone, and I'd be talking to their POCs, their points of contact, and they would be desperate. They would be crying. You'd be hearing gunshots in the background. They'd be telling you horrific stories of watching their neighbors dragged out into the streets and shot. And many times I could even see this as I was talking to them or hear it on the phone. And I didn't know what to say to them. And so I just said what I learned in the Army, that you would say to a wounded cohort. You just, if one of your buddies was shot and you came upon him, you were trained to say, you're going to be okay, and I'm going to be with you till you're safe. And that was the promise I made. And I'm really glad I made that promise, because it's been a hard 2 years. It's been hard for the Vulnerable People Project team. Obviously, it's been much harder for our Afghan allies. I don't know if the Vulnerable People Project would have stuck in for 2 years. I have to tell you, our last safe house, almost all of our original SIVs have been resettled, almost really all of them. The safe houses we have now are from organizations that abandoned their safe houses, and they ran out of money or will or both, and abandoned those safe houses. And we took those over, and in the safe houses are religious minorities, Afghan allies who were courageous in their service, shoulder to shoulder with Americans. And so we will not leave them. And you have not left us. I want to thank you. I do get emails. Why are you still in Afghanistan? We made a promise. We're going to keep that promise. And our mission is very simple: to defend the vulnerable from violence, to stand with the most vulnerable people in the world when the world is left. We do this through two ways: by inspiring solidarity and promoting human dignity and doing acts of mercy. Quickly about Lahaina, there are a lot of large organizations that are staging and preparing to serve the people of Lahaina. But as you've probably been seeing in the news, and there's been getting a lot of news coverage, that the state and the large organizations have taking a long time. We're already there. So we will be there probably for a couple of weeks. These large organizations will get moving. And when that happens, we're going to move on to something that's very sorrowful, but I want to share with you. We know that the casualties are much, much, much tragically higher than is being reported. And a lot of these families were struggling before they lost everything. And now they lost family members, they lost children, they lost their spouses. So Vulnerable People Project is going to be moving in quietly. We're not going to be talking about this in the media. We're going to be going directly to our donors. But we really want to do our best to help cover the cost of the funerals. We are a Catholic apostolate. I know so many of our supporters are not Catholic, but we are a Catholic apostolate, and one of the works of mercy is burying the dead. And as these large organizations eventually get set up and begin to care for the people of Lahaina, and the community, by the way, the people of Hawaii, the community in Maui, they've led the way in caring for their own. But it's obviously this crisis requires all of us to step in. I always say that vulnerable people are not weak people. They are strong people that have been placed in impossible situations. What happened in Lahaina is a 9/11. It's strange to me how the media has not been covering this tragedy the way it deserves. This is an epic tragedy. Tourists are arriving, they don't even really know what's happened. And because the media is not covering this. But we want to be there with them. We want to be useful. This is the Vulnerable People Project hat. We have patches for everywhere we work. Nigeria, Malawi, Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan. But my favorite patch always is my Hawaii patch, because I founded this organization in Honolulu in 2002. And I always say that the mystery of the Vulnerable People Project is aloha. The mystery of the Vulnerable People Project, what makes us, I think, a little different in the hospitality and love, is that it was really formed by the Christian vision of the human person, Christian social teaching. but it was where I became a Christian, where I received my formation as a young man in Hawaii. So I think the most natural thing in the world for the Vulnerable People Project is to stand with our own. But just this week alone, we took over another safe house in Afghanistan. And just this week alone, we're going to be having to buy a doctor her car just died on her. She would be driving from Lviv every week to Zaporizhia. We're going to be providing her with a car. We're continuing to provide security for vulnerable parishes in Malawi and Nigeria. And we can do all of this thanks to your generosity and the really hard work of our team, our core team members of the Vulnerable People Project, and our partners. We have wonderful partners working with us in Afghanistan. We have wonderful partners. I can't really say who they are. In Ukraine, we're working with Chalice of Mercy. In Zaporizhia, we're working with Tip of the Spear Landmine Removal, Ryan Hendrickson. And in Hawaii, of course, Epic Ministries. But you are the key. A donor emailed me and said, "You never have to thank me. Why do you thank us all the time? You know, does the quarterback thank the center for snapping the ball?" He's like, "I know if I don't snap the ball, there's going to be no play, but don't thank me every time." And I appreciated his sentiment, because the truth is, you guys are the quarterback. I mean, you guys are the center. If you don't hike the ball, there's no play. But thanks to your continued support for us, your fortitude in this, our work in Afghanistan, it's taken a lot longer than we had thought, but you've stayed with us, and we have been able to care for people. We've distributed 3 million meals across Afghanistan this year. We were able to provide secure schools for minorities last year. We're distributing school supplies this year. We're caring for the widows and orphans of our Afghan allies. We're hiding our allies in safe houses till we can get them resettled. That's all because of you. Okay, this is coming from an airport. I'm trying to be quiet so it doesn't get through this glass. I've got about 2 minutes before I have to run out to my connection. But I wanted to stop and make this video for you. Remember the people of Afghanistan today. Remember those families that are hiding. Pray for our partners in Lahaina. Pray for the people of Lahaina. Pray for the people of Maui. And I'm praying for you. My team is thoughtful of you. And thank you for always standing with us as we stand with the most vulnerable people in the world. When we stand with the vulnerable, they're no longer vulnerable. That's our mission. Aloha.